job that I've been committed to for the last 9 years, I have missed the collegiality of talking law, both within my former chambers as a barrister, but also talking generally. Because part of the job that I have to fulfill now is really politics. And most of you will understand the politics of sport supersede even the politics of government. So half my life is now in the political sphere, and it's obviously very enjoyable for me to return to the law to be able to talk about it. My colleague Julian is better versed in the law of WADA than I am, and I have to concede that because he does it on a daily basis. And the only part that I play really in the conduct of our WADA activities and what we do in relation to appeals is exercise judgment. And I think those of us who are older people realise that judgment comes a little bit with age, and I hope that I can offer some of that. So the way in which I'm going to be part of this today is to listen, and that's a very beneficial thing for me, having travelled so far just recently. Tomorrow, however, I do want to take you through the issues that Khaled has raised, because we are revising the World Anti-Doping Code. We do need input from non-Europeans. And I don't want to express that too strongly, but we have a very bureaucratic approach to things because they've been engaged in anti-doping much longer than us, they've got a longer experience, and they therefore feel as they have more expertise. Some of that is true, but if you're going to put the word world into World Anti-Doping Agency, we have to take account of the other continents. And I've just been in Asia talking with the Asian sports ministers and their officials along the same lines, making sure that the code reflects other cultures and other ways of thinking. And it's only too obvious to all of us that we do work and think in different ways. That has to be recognised both in the way in which we run a structured legal process, but also in the way that we run and structure the rules. So I hope that we can get some African input into the code and the way that we are reviewing it and the other rules over the next year or two. It's going to be wonderful for us to actually host the conference, the World Conference here in Johannesburg in November 2013. And I have to just, well, I've got the opportunity on my feet to thank Kala, but also to thank the South African government for their generosity in agreeing to host this conference. There will be more than 1,500, 1,700 delegates from every country and from every sport in the world, and an opportunity to be able to discuss matters anti-doping, but also other issues while they are here. The reason for the delay is quite simple, George, is that the new revisions will be determined here in Johannesburg in November 2013, but every NADO and every government and every sport will then have to implement them within their own anti-doping rules, and that generally takes time, if not a general meeting or a congress or something, to make sure that they're passed properly. So the task that we will have after November will be to produce some model rules so that people can copy them and don't have to pay a lot of money on lawyers. And we will then also monitor them to make sure that they are compliant with the revised code. I think you should just believe half of what you hear and give credit to everybody in this room, because the fight against doping in sport can only be won if we all join together. And I think one of the unique issues that WADA brings to the world in general is that bringing together. Minister, honourable members of the SAGE Tribunal, Shoaib, of course, as the chairman of the SAGE board, Khaled, CEO, friends and delegates. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. My language, that is welcome to my speech. I feel among friends. I won't continue in Māori because I think I'm probably the only one who will understand me. That may be a good thing in some way. What I am doing really this morning is not standing in for the minister because I could never fill the shoes of such an eminent politician. I think what I thought I might do just in the brief 5 or 10 minutes that are given to me is give you a little bit of an idea of the current challenges that we all face in the fight against doping in sport. And I'm not quite sure how I can find my little presentation, but if you can help me, I probably can show you a couple of slides. What I want to emphasise at the moment is that the fight against doping is at the crossroads. It's at the crossroads. We have been in place now for 12 years. There are more challenges that we are confronting now than we did 12 years ago. There is more money in sport. There is more incentive to cheat. There is more involvement of the criminal underworld. And yet we, as the World Anti-Doping Agency, have united the world. The United Nations has not been as effective in any one of its operations. So the commitment to what we are all here for today is again unique. And I think that's really something that we all owe to everybody around the world. It's not something that comes from WADA. It's not a WADA management issue. This is a togetherness thing that has spread and taken hold around the world. So one of the things that I'm worried about at present is what we call anti-doping fatigue. A lot of people have been engaged in this issue now for, as I say, 12 years. I mean, like show, I can look around the room, I feel among friends here. I've been here quite a number of times. I think South Africa is probably one of the leading countries in this commitment against doping. And also, I should commend SAIDS for this, a leader in the African continent. Because if we look at what has happened in the African continent at the time that we started, most of the countries now in this continent know what anti-doping is about. We have 6 regional anti-doping organisations throughout the continent that did not exist until 2006. So there's been a considerable movement in terms of commitment to this continent. And part of that is due to the activities of SAIDS and the way that they have gone about assisting countries that previously didn't even know what the words meant. Now, let's just look at a couple of the issues that I've got on this slide. Don't forget that athletes are mostly naive, maybe not innocent, but certainly naive, young people who are generally surrounded by adults who have more knowledge, experience of life, and so on. Therefore, they're going to be, at all times, under some persuasive ability, if you like, by the members of their operation. People want a piece of the action, and the way they can get a piece of the action, because they would perhaps not superior in their own line of work, is through a sport star, a sport hero. So, what people are doing now, in a very sophisticated way, is helping that athlete to be a superstar by helping them through cheating. That sophistication is getting higher and higher, and I'll come back to that. When you add to that the fact that it's very easy to get a hold of banned substances. Some countries, you can buy it across the counter because there are no laws in place banning them. Then you add the fact that the internet makes it available anyway. Plus the engagement of the criminal underworld. And I mentioned this yesterday. We now understand that perhaps up to 25% of world sport, I'm talking from lower levels to higher levels, is under the influence of the criminal underworld. Whether that be by way of supplying prohibited substances through doping, whether it be by spot fixing or match fixing, bribery, corruption, it's happening. Now, we are not tasked to take that on. we in the anti-doping movement cannot do what law enforcement people are paid to do, and we shouldn't have to. But we have to recognise that that exists, and somehow work together with law enforcement through government and so on to make it stop, or at least put a halt momentarily to what's going on. And then, as I said, we've got the issue of anti-doping fatigue.